status of children's rights within Uganda. And we're joined by Mrs. Maureen Muwonge. She's the Director, Child Protection at Dwelling Places. Now, to continue this conversation, over the weekend, for a number of us, we have been celebrating Fresh Kid. He's the latest boy on the block. He's a 7-year-old. And someone tweeted, Fresh Kid is performing in clubs and bars at the age of 7 years simply because we as a country don't have child protection services. The National Children's Authority is not even on social media where this boy is simply doing the rounds. This kid can make money with his talent, but not with the style of his management. So things coming into question are his age and where he's performing and what effect this will have on him. But let's take a look at a performance of Fresh Kid before we get into the conversation.
Help me welcome for the first time ever in his life, Fresh Kid!
Fresh Kid! Saka kabega bosubera kopaneke chaibuka lumonyo kusenga biriki sanina muruganda jiite rusiki babas matengoya zote sambajiki sha what zabapita Fresh Kid siri waluvutonga sweet kid nedi buga za nyomu smaller head niwa buga sonyonga za kid bayimiri sanga kala ya red ya Texas wala ituli bad na kuba bala pachiboko kupalede kuwanga mulapu bajate walina kadi yo izanaje kuba unisa wokote komiti mangolimba lona kesa brode wa cancer a Fresh Kid the full of fesa level nachi a Fresh Kid Uganda.
That is Fresh Kid entertaining an audience, and it was a huge audience. Now, one thing that comes into mind is he's good, he's talented, right? But he is a child. Well, we're going to have a conversation now with Mrs. Maureen Muwonge. You're most welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
Do you see a child as an adult in that video?
Definitely. He's 7 and he should be doing what a 7-year-old is supposed to be doing. However, he's been taken into a situation where he has to act as a child. When you look at the content in the songs, it's not of a 7-year-old, it's of an adult, and that affects his growth and behavior as a child. The Education Act requires that we develop the talent of children. However, the way we're supposed to develop those talents should be educative according to their age. Now, when you look at the way he's been exposed to clubs, he's been exposed to so many dirty things that a child of a 7-year-old should not be exposed to, and that is not right. Definitely the Child Amendment Act, the Children's Amendment Act in Uganda also requires that the children are protected. He is in clubs very late at night working. The law requires for children to work, and it requires for 16-year-olds to be able to work, 12-year-olds to be able to work with supervision. And the most important thing to note is the fact that they should do age-appropriate activities, which is not the case with this child. So we are abusing the right of the child. He should be in school at 7. He should be sleeping possibly at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., getting ready to be able to go to school the next day. I'm not sure if he's in school, but definitely the exposure that he has right now affects his performance at school, affects the way he relates with his peers. He's not able to relate as a child. He's not able to behave as a child. That right has been taken away from him, and definitely that's not right.
Is the problem the fact that he's in the secular world? for example, if he was maybe a gospel, artist, would the scenario be totally different?
No, I would say no, because all children should be protected, whether secular or Christian world, they should be protected. If they're going to use their talents to perform, say dance or sing, it should be at the right time, in the right audience, giving out the right information, like communication that is in the message that is behind the singing should be the right information. So I've also seen children that are in Christian shows, but late in the night, and still that does not make it right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's important that we look at the age of the child. The child should be performing maybe before their peers on parents' days at such an age, as you help them grow their talent. It should be age appropriate, and the timing is very important.
But do you think that maybe the parents, or even just us as the fans, barely people asking the right questions, as such as, is this child doing what's appropriate for their age? Should we perhaps be saying that, no, let's first wait until this child is 16? Because when you mention the fact that if you're below 16, between 12 and 16, you should be doing work under supervision. Yes. Do you think that as a country we are aware of these laws?
I think the gap that we have is awareness creation, because the laws are in place. We have the right laws in place. We have the Children Amendment Act. We have the African Charter on the rights of the children, and it addresses. It should give guidance on how to help the child develop their talent, the child with media, the child with exposure, but many of us are not aware of the law. The law is not interpreted in the language that we understand, and therefore that is a gap. There is need for us to go out there and sensitize the community about the law. There is need for us to interpret the law in the language that the different languages that people understand, to be able to appreciate the law. But also the parents have a responsibility to protect their children from abuse and exploitation. Definitely, although this child is making money, they're being exploited. Their talent is used to make money. I'm not sure if that money is for his benefit, but definitely the manager and maybe the parent are benefiting more from this than the child himself. So that exploitation is not allowed by law.
Okay, and of which it becomes exploitation if then the child is deprived of other rights, for example, going to school, resting enough, and the different orientations that come with it. So that's when it becomes exploitation.
Yes.
But when it's balanced out, then it's okay.
It is okay
All
if
right.
it's balanced out, and if it's age appropriate,
All right.
then that should be okay, because we definitely need the children to develop their talents, and it should be educative. It should be helping them to develop, to understand the world, their world around them, and if we keep within the boundaries of the law, then it should be okay.
And what if the parent perhaps does not see that maybe they are failing to do the job, which is, say, this child should not be doing this? Who steps in then? Is it the child rights activists? Is it just any normal person as a neighbor? I say, I don't feel that this is right for this child.
Well, we have structures in place, right from the LC1. In that community, they have a responsibility to make sure that the children in their community are protected. We used to have a saying, it takes a whole village to raise a child.
Yes.
That saying died out slowly.
Completely.
But even the neighbor who is concerned, they should be able to report to the LC, to the police. We have the Family and Child Protection Unity, and we have a police post almost on every village. We have the probation and social welfare officers in every district. We have the community development officers, and they are all under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, who is the custodian of the law. in terms of child protection, and therefore there are structures in place that should be able to protect this child. Someone needs to say something about it. Someone needs to.
If we have all these laws in place, just moving away from, you know, Fresh Kid, of course, that performance that we did see was of Comedy Store, one of the comedy, you know, programs right here at NTV, which pretty much, like you're saying, it's not age appropriate, but it's not also too secular. I think that was pretty much acceptable. But keeping in mind that he does perform, you know, in clubs. Moving away from that, when we go to the streets, just here right now, when we go to, you know, the roundabout, you'll see children hawking. If we have such laws in place, why do such things then happen?
Well, we have laws in place, yes, but we also have gaps. Many of the children that you see on the streets are hailing from Karamoja. The major issue is internal trafficking. There are many children that are trafficked from Karamoja for street begging. Right now, KCCA and other stakeholders are in the process of developing an ordinance which will address many of the issues that you see with the children that are begging on the streets, children that are working on the streets. Like I mentioned before, if you're 12 and under, between 12 and 16, you're supposed to be working with an adult who is responsible for you under supervision. But we see 7-year-olds hawking things. We see 4-year-olds begging on the streets. It's not just begging for money so that child can be helped. It's actually a form of child labor, because this child is not benefiting from that money. The adult responsible for them is actually benefiting. The children are bought as cheap as 50,000 shillings from Napak to come and work on the streets. On the streets, while they're there, in a month they can make over 200,000 shillings, you know, and this money benefits the adult, not the child, not their family, but the adult in the picture. That is not right. So that's why KCCA, Ministry of Gender, are working together, one, to ensure that the children are taken off the streets, but also the culprits are reprimanded and brought to book.
But you know, when you talk about that, Ms. Muwonge, we think of Napak, like you said, and children being bought from that area. And you actually did mention that we have different, you know, leadership clusters with LC, you know, leaders and chairpersons. How does it happen? And I hear that some of these things actually do happen in the broad daylight. If we have such leaders, you know, in place in Napak, why do we still have this trade of children?
Part of the challenge has been, say, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've not had active LC1 structures in place. We've just gone through the elections, and right now what we're doing is to create awareness, starting with the local leaders, on how they can protect children, what their mandate is in terms of protecting children within their community. And as we go on to create awareness, they are right now putting structures in place. When you look at Napak right now, just last month we recorded about 85 children that were intercepted en route to either Kampala or Kenya. And they were intercepted because they've now put structures in place. We have the child protection champions that have been trained. We have they are able to intercept buses. They are able to check on checkpoints if any child is not accompanied. They should be taken off the bus and handed over to the police. The transport licensing board is now on board. Previously, the transport owners thought, well, it's about money. If you pay me, as long as you pay me, that's it. I'll take you wherever you want. But the transport licensing board is saying, no, you need to do more than just making money. We need to protect the children. We need to amend the law in terms of transport to ensure that the children are protected. We are not fueling trafficking.
When we talk about the law coming into place and how they're going to manage a few things as law enforcement, there's also the parent. Now, from way back when you'd say you have only 2 children, the more children you had, the more labor you had at home as labor force. So there's also the perception within the community, if your child can earn money for you, why not?
It's unfortunate that some of the cultures encourage child labor, but the mother law requires that a child is protected, and that it's the parent's responsibility to take care of the child, not the other way around. Therefore, we still continue to sensitize the communities. We've brought the clan leaders and cultural leaders on board to try and create this awareness and remind them they need to understand that yes, we have our cultures and we can still maintain the values within our cultures, but there are some cultural beliefs that are not right, that should not be maintained within the culture, because it affects the right of the child, it exposes the child to abuse and exploitation. And the good news is that they are positive. They are very positive, and they are embracing the trainings, they are embracing the new law, they are advocating, they are putting structures in place. We've had LCs in the park that report, use the child helpline 116 to report cases of children that have been missing. We're putting structures of registers at villages where LCs would know which children are in which households, you know, at village level, so they hold their parents accountable for the missing children.
Ms. Monge, just look at that picture on your screen, and we're getting a question on social media, and someone is asking, as much as, you know, the KCCA and different stakeholders are coming with an ordinance to ensure that we don't see this in the coming future, how long will it take? Because someone is saying it's just as simple as intercepting these people, because they're families that we see on a day-to-day basis. Right now, when we go to the streets, we're going to see these children who at this time ought to be in school.
When you look at the law, it has some gaps. It's silent in some areas. For example, if a parent brought the child to beg, they are not trafficking. A parent or a relative cannot be referred as a trafficker. So the law is silent on that. That's why KCCA is coming up with the ordinance to ensure that whoever is giving money, you're committing a crime. Right now, it's not really a crime to give money to anyone or to give a snack to a child on the streets. It's not a crime according to the laws of Uganda. So it's those gaps that we've identified that are loopholes within the law that are being manipulated.
So even if it's a parent who is taking the child to the streets to beg, the law does not say that this parent ought to be brought to book. If
they are arrested, they can be charged under neglect. However, sometimes it's not easy when you rescue the child. In most cases, the parents would run away. There've been cases where we've actually arrested and they've been taken to court. The parents have been taken to court. But in most cases, those are not their close relatives or blood relatives. It's usually the people that are exploiting the children. So we are trying to close all the gaps that have been identified, the loopholes that have been identified, to ensure that if you're in traffic, if you're driving, you should not stop. You should be not be engaging the child. You should be focusing on the traffic flow and driving.
How long will that take?
Well, on Thursday, tomorrow, at Africana, KCCA and other stakeholders are meeting with the mayors of Kampala to be able to review the ordinance. It's already in draft, it's under review, and we're hopeful that if the meeting tomorrow goes well, then we'll have it approved, and therefore it will be a law, and then we'll start the process of popularization, creating awareness, but at the same time also implementing it.
Okay. With all that is being said, and when it comes to child rights protection, so many people do not miss out the fact that all of this is supposed to help the child enjoy their childhood, because the effects of if they skip this part of their life. Let's talk about the effects of putting children into child labor.
Child labor definitely affects the child's ability to be a child. If you're into child labor, I look at the children who are who head families, they are child-headed families. I look at children who take on the responsibility to care for their parents or to support their families. They are not able to play. They are not able to go to school. They don't have a right to cry. They don't have a right to throw tantrums because that has been taken away from them. Now this comes back to them in the future because they missed a stage in their life as they were growing up. This catches up with them in the future. At the point where you expect them to be adults, to be responsible, because they missed a stage, they get to a point where they get a fallback. And that affects their growth, that affects their families. At the end of the day, the way they raise a child, if they start a family, the way they relate with, if it's a girl, they don't know how to relate with a husband. They know they are supposed to take care of the home. While in marriage, a wife should look up to a husband, this child will end up struggling because they've all their lives, they've been brought up knowing it's their responsibility. They make decisions. They don't know how to relate with the rest of the world. They don't know how to relate with the rest of the children because that has been taken away from them. And that affects them emotionally.
Wow, interesting. And so as we come to a close, what is the responsibility of each and everyone watching today? What can we do to change that particular cycle?
We all have a role to play. It's our responsibility to take care of the children. The Ugandans that are in Kampala, not just Kampala actually, there are very many children on the streets in the different parts of the country. And it's our responsibility not to give cash to the children. If we stop the flow of finances, I can assure you the children will not be there because they won't have anything to do.
Right.
So let's stop giving them money. Let's stop giving them food. Let's channel that help to other CSOs, like dwelling places, for example. There are so many CSOs that are working to ensure that these children get off the streets. If that support can be channeled to those CSOs, that would be very helpful. 2, let's advocate. Create awareness. It's your responsibility to do something about it. If you find a child in need, don't just ignore. Take them to the police. Report. Let's do something about it. Thirdly, there are structures in place. Can we use them and encourage them, challenge them to do something about the protection of children in their community? Taking care of a child starts with me as an individual. We need support. We are very many, but we need support. Can you come and volunteer? You can come and work with us. Let's work together. It takes a whole village to raise a child.
Yes, interesting. Thank you so much, Miss Maureen Muwonge, the Director Child Protection at Dwelling Places. You now have heard it, yeah? Don't give handouts, don't give food to these children who beg on the streets, because that way will discourage this particular cycle. You can imagine them coming from a park, being sold off just to come here, and people take advantage of them. So let's take something, let's take action and change the situation currently. Thank you so much for coming in studios.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So right about now, we want to tell you how traffic looks like in Najankumbi. Let's link to Stephen Bide. Good morning.
Facebook page ya Nantu metateka kochi. It's NTV that is turning on your world. This is Stephen Mbide coming to you live from Najankumbi along Entebbe Road, and this is the traffic update. And for you who is planning to travel or drive from along Entebbe Road, areas of Zana, Lubowa, Kajansi and beyond, just know that as you drive towards the Najankumbi, a few meters from Zana, that's where you'll be bumping into this heavy traffic jam flowing to the city center. As you can see from the